This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heiler.
Chapter 45, Caemlyn, and her symbol is the lion.
I feel like that's about as appropriate as you can get.
Matt had vague memories of Caemlyn, but when he approached it in the early hours after sunrise, it seemed as if he had never been there before. They had not been alone on the road since first light. The other riders surrounded them now, and trains of merchants' wagons and folk afoot, all streaming toward the great city. Built on rising hills, it was surely as large as Tarvalon, and outside the huge walls, a 50-foot height of pale, grayish stone streaked with white and silver sparkling in the sun, spaced with tall, round towers, with a lion banner of Andor waving atop them, white on red. Outside those walls, it seemed as if another great city had been placed, wrapping around the walled city, all red brick and gray stone and white plastered walls, inns pushed in on houses of 3 or 4 stories, so fine they must belong to wealthy merchants, shops with goods displayed on tables under awnings crowding against wide, windowless warehouses, open markets, under red and purple roof tiles, lined the road on both sides, men and women already crying their wares, bargaining at the top of their voices, while penned calves and sheep and goats and pigs, caged geese and chickens and ducks, added to the din. He seemed to remember thinking Caemlyn was too noisy when he was here before. Now it sounded like a heartbeat, pumping wealth.
Matt does think about the money a lot. Welcome to Camelot. Caemlyn.
Caemlyn a lot.
Caemlyn a lot. There's a lot of Caemlyn, that's for sure. It's a big place. And there's the old city and the new city. The new city being younger than 2,000 years. The old city being the Ogier-built inner city.
Yeah, we see Matt kind of reference that a lot, or his perspective kind of references that a lot, where he says, like, this building looks like it could have been in Tarvalon because it was possibly built by the same people.
Sure. And that's the inner city, which has been Ogier built and has those beautiful white tower-esque construction. But then the outer building is much, I think, or the outer city, the new city, is much more just human-built structures. Right. There's like a clear separation between the two.
Yeah. And Ogier are people too, by the way.
Really more trees.
A man could earn some gold in this city, Tom, once he found a game of dice or cards. He was not quite so lucky as cards as at dice, but few except nobles and the wealthy played those games anyway. I thought that was interesting to point out, and something we see throughout the series, that cards is not necessarily a game of chance.
Well, it's not as random, because there's bluffing and there's
skill involved.
Yeah.
Whereas throwing dice on the floor is, you just get what you get. There's no way to play a bad hand of dice.
No, but you can definitely get lucky at cards when it matters. You know, for example, if you're playing Hold'em, you know, that fifth card that flips over can make a big difference. And if you have luck, that can win you a lot of money.
Sure.
I do find it funny that he's like, hates nobles, but that's exactly who he wants to play with. Because he's thinking, I can take money off of them.
Yeah. Tom suggests they go to the Queen's Blessing, which apparently is always where Tom goes when he goes to Caemlyn. He's good friends with Master Gil.
Well, they like to play stones together.
Yeah.
Master Gil loses pretty badly.
But Matt says he's not going to go to the inn right away. He wants to head straight to the palace to get rid of that damn letter, which he believes people are trying to assassinate him for, but it's actually just because he's him.
Totally. So he's not even going to stop in at the inn. He's just going directly to the palace initially.
Yeah. And we see a lot of scenes here of, like, descriptions of Caemlyn and the winding roads and the hills and how all the I think he said avenues in the inner city point toward...
Boulevards,
okay. Point toward the palace, so he knows how to get there, because if you just pick one of those roads and walk down it, you'll eventually get there.
And then once you're in the inner city, all the roads spiral inwards towards the palace.
Yeah.
So it's not that hard. You can't really get lost in Caemlyn.
So finding the palace is easy. Maybe leaving it seems to be a little more confusing.
Well, sure, if you're going anywhere in particular, you've got to go on the right spiral.
Yes.
And then get to the outer city, and then, who knows what direction you're going in at that point.
Ogier are artists, maybe, not engineers so much.
It depends on what the goal is. If the goal is that the palace is the center of the city, I think they did a pretty good job of directing traffic in and out from there.
Oh, yeah, and it's beautiful. I just, from the description, sometimes I question how efficient it is. You know? That's what I mean. Not that they can't make a building.
But I mean, I get the feeling everyone wants to be in an Ogier-built building. I think they talk about how beautiful they are, but I bet they're functional as well.
Sure.
Like, I don't think the Ogier would, I think...
Not functional. I just mean maybe they can't build a building like a Shinaran, which is, you know...
all square edges
cube.
And... totally, yeah. It's not
Straight
100%
lines.
about utility. It's also about the beauty.
Yeah.
And I see where maybe some of the beauty gets in way of the utility, but I think they're good enough architects that they're able to incorporate both.
And I do appreciate that. I often wonder why we can't have beautiful public buildings like churches. Like, how about like the New York City Public Library? But that's pretty uncommon, you know?
Architects are expensive.
Gorgeous shrines to, yeah, that's true. That's why public buildings are usually ugly, because they're cheap.
Yeah. A lot of the apartment buildings going up are that way too, where they're built for profit, so they're built as cheaply as possible.
Ooh, yeah, there's some ugly modern architecture happening in Portland right now. Some of it's nice.
And I'm fully on board with infill and trying to increase the amount of housing in the city to prevent the San Francisco, Seattle issues of not having enough housing for everyone and living here is already expensive enough. We don't need to having a housing crisis on top of that.
Yeah.
We do need more housing. The problem is that it's ugly. And it's not necessarily adapted to the neighborhood it's in. It's like...
yeah, so you'll be passing like lines of these old, unique Victorians, and then there's like this weird boxy glass and steel thing in the middle of it. What are you doing there?
Taking up every inch of the available space on the lot. You know, it's like they figured out what the maximum footprint of those buildings could be and then added an overhang.
Yes, they actually do that.
Just to add a few more square foot. And I guess what bugs me about those houses is that they're not multifamily house. It's still one family living on that same piece of property.
Mm.
It's if you're going to build an apartment building, like those modern houses oftentimes are no more efficient than just building another Victorian on the same space if you're just going to make it a single family home.
Yeah, sometimes less efficient.
Yeah.
And plus, they don't have a nice covered porch with columns. And I don't understand why everyone doesn't want that. But
because people don't sit outside anymore. Used to be the only way to get out of the heat was to go sit on your porch.
I sit outside all the time. Maybe I'm old-fashioned.
A little bit.
No, I have noticed that none of the other neighbors use it. I'm the only person that goes and sits in the courtyard. But moving forward.
So Matt makes it to the palace and heads for the front gates.
I thought I would read this scene.
Cool.
Matt drew rein and put on a smile. "Good morning to you, Captain." The officer turned, staring at him through the bars of his face guard with deep, beady eyes, like a pudgy rat in a cage. The man was older than he had expected, surely old enough to have more than one knot of rank, and fat rather than stocky. "What do you want, farmer?" he demanded roughly. Matt drew a breath. "Make it good. Impress this fool so he doesn't keep me waiting all day. I don't want to have to flash the Emerlin's paper around to keep from kicking my heels. I come from Tarvalon, from the White Tower, bearing a letter from—" "You come from Tarvalon, farmer?" The fat officer's stomach shook as he laughed, but then his laughter cut off, as if severed with a knife, and he glared. "We want no letters from Tarvalon, rogue, if you have such a thing. Our good queen, may the light illumine her." Sticking with it. No, I did that totally accidentally. "May the light illumine her." "We'll take no word from the White Tower until the daughter heir is returned to her. I never heard of any messenger from the tower wearing a countryman's coat and breeches. It is plain to me you're up to some trick, perhaps thinking you'll find a few coins if you come claiming to carry letters. But you will be lucky if you don't end in a prison cell. If you do come from Tarvalon, go back and tell the tower to return the daughter heir before we come and take her. If you're a trickster after silver, get out of my sight before I have you beat within an inch of your life. Either way, you half-wit looby, be gone." Matt had been trying to edge a word in from the beginning of the man's speech. He said quickly, "The letter is from her, man. It is from—" "Did I not tell you to be gone, ruffian?" the fat man bellowed. His face was growing nearly as red as his coat. "Take yourself out of my sight, you gutter scum. If you are not gone by the count of 10, I will arrest you for littering the plaza with your presence. 1, 2, can you count so high, you fat fool? Matt snapped. I tell you, Elaine sent guards. The officer's face was purple now. Seize this man for a dark friend. Matt hesitated a moment. Sure, no one could take such a charge seriously, but the red-coated guards dashed toward him, all dozen men in breastplates and helmets, and he wheeled his horse and galloped ahead of them, followed by the fat man's shouts. The gelding was no racer, but it outdistanced men afoot easily enough. People dodged out of his way along the curving streets, shaking fists after him and shouting as many curses as the officer had.
All right, so that guy is a dark friend working for Gabriel, and he's doing his best to prevent the message sent by the daughter heir from reaching the queen.
I just saw him as a scummy jerk.
He is that as well, but I'm pretty sure that his reaction escalates every time he hears Matt mention something about Elaine or Tarvalin.
Yeah.
He seems to cut him off as soon as it's not just that he's like continuing to talk. It's that he says, it's from her, Elaine, and the guy freaks out and calls him a dark friend. So I think that his reaction
is on purpose. More purposeful than...
It's not just that he's an idiot. He's actually like overplaying his rage in order to prevent this message from getting to the daughter heir.
I like that.
From the daughter heir to the queen.
That makes a lot of sense.
He has that one nod of rank, even though he's older. That's because he's like one of the new people that's been introduced to the soldiers by Gabriel.
Yeah. We see later Master Gil says that he's actually impressed that Gabriel could have replaced so many of the guards so quickly. That it was actually like...
It helps when you have the queen under compulsion.
Well, yes. But just the amount of work of firing and rehiring that many people is like, I can't believe he did this so quickly.
Oh, I think he had a lot of dark friends ready to go.
That's probably right.
Older men. This guy is probably just a brawler of some sort, dark friend brawler who got promoted in air quotes.
He's given an official position.
Exactly. And probably just told, like, keep out any messengers for the queen. Send them all through me.
Yeah. Or just kill them.
Yeah, or arrest them for dark. He's thinking, I'll arrest this guy as a dark friend. We'll keep him in the prison. Gabriel can interrogate him, get whatever he wants out of him, and then pass that on to the queen, whether he wants to or not.
Yeah.
And of course, here Matt's kind of pissed at Elaine for being like, why didn't she tell me things had changed in Andor? But she has no idea.
No.
So again, Matt just being like, I should have asked, but it wouldn't have done him any good to ask.
And then, as he's wandering back to the queen's blessing, he has an idea from a story that Rand told him. It's not that hard to get into the palace. Right past the guards, there's this one wall.
It's funny he remembers even that.
Yeah. Well, there's also a bunch of a little bit of information in here that I've kind of skipped over, I think. But he thinks about how he'll remember some things, like look up at a signpost and remember seeing it, but not remember what the next block looked like. So it's like little bits and pieces that he is able to remember, but
it's like he's got holes in his memory.
Yeah, it's incomplete.
He flees and heads back to, well, it doesn't head back to, but heads to the Queen's Blessing. Because why does he actually head back to the Queen's Blessing? Why doesn't he just go right for the wall? Is it because that's where he has to start out from, or?
I'm not sure why he goes back. He smiled and almost turned back. He had suddenly remembered something and had an idea that appealed to him a good deal more than walking through the palace gates. Even if that fat officer had not been watching the gates, he thought he would like it better, but it doesn't say why he decides to continue on. He almost turns back, and I think that when he realizes he's not going to be able to hand the letter personally to the Queen during the conversation with Tom and Gil, that's when he gets up and he's like, F it, I'm doing it.
Okay.
And I suspect, I don't know that. That's a good question, CS Army. I suspect that it's a blend of both. It's some dark friends that he's promoted to... I should read the question. Why would he use dark friends to put into the palace guards instead of just, a bunch of idiots? And like I said, I suspect it's both. Yeah,
I'm sure he's got some loyal idiots, but these guys, the Forsaken use dark friends. That's what they do. That's how they get loyalty. They call up all these dark friends that they've identified and get them to do stuff for them.
Yeah. And it helps to have people to, keep your conspiracy quiet and all that.
And you can give them orders, like make sure the queen doesn't get any messages from the daughter heir, and they will enforce that.
Right, rather than, and we see this later, there's like a smattering of old Queen's Guards from before Ravine who are still very loyal.
Mostly just Talonbor.
Yeah.
Young Talonbor.
But there's a few peppered in there. He arrives at the Queen's blessing, and I thought it was interesting that he remembered one of the workers' names, but not all of them. And
he remembers Cook. The whole scene with Raimi, when he's like, "You remember me, Raimi," and tosses him silver, and Raimi's like, yeah, sure do. Thanks very much. I'm out of here before don't ask me your name.
Slipped my mind. I'm not good at people. I'm good at horses. And when Matt walks in, he said, "Well, Cook," he announced, "I am back, and not a year since I left." She peered at him a moment, then nodded. "I remember you." He began to grin. "You were with that young prince, weren't you?" And he's like, ugh.
The one who looked so much like Tigraine.
The light illumined her memory.
His mother.
Yeah.
So again, one of those little dribs and drabs. Like, up until the first two books, we constantly hear how much Rand looks like an Aiel. In this book, we hear how much he looks like Tigraine.
Right.
This is like the second or third reference to that we've gotten from people who have seen him. It's interesting. I don't know, perhaps, if Jordan may have altered who was going to be Rand's parents. I no, probably not. But
that's probably just more relevant now, and
yeah,
we're getting to know characters who may have met or been near Tigraine to actually know that, you know.
But it's not like the cook mentioned it before when Rand came through.
She's like, "Oh, that tall, handsome man you were here with. You're a servant, right?"
The prince. And
Matt loves that, of course.
Matt off, yeah. Like, no, I'm not.
She sends him to the library where Tom and Gil are smoking, and Gil's losing a game of stones.
With the message to get off your lazy butt and clean out the drains.
Right. It's like, I must be married.
Nope, she just runs us in. I wonder if that has anything to do with why he ran away with Morghese. He's like, gotta go.
You got this, right?
Have fun running the inn.
A pretty serving girl with big eyes giggled and directed him down a hall beside the common room.
Big eyes, eh?
Yep, just wanted to throw that out there. Pink-faced Basil Gill and Tom Maryland were seated at one of the tables facing each other across a stones board, pipes in their teeth trailing thin blue streamers of tabac smoke. A calico cat sat on the table beside a wooden dice cup, her tail curled over her feet, and watching them play. The Gleeman's cloak was nowhere in sight, so Matt supposed he had already gotten a room. "You're done sooner than I expected, boy," Tom said around his pipe stream. And after a little conversation and dissembling, they realized that Matt tells them that he was chased off, basically.
Sure.
Gil gives us the vital info about how the Queen's Guard has been changing.
I think Lord Gabriel is playing on Morghese's reputation for anger and using that to punish people that are not loyal to him.
Yeah, I noticed at one point Gil says, "Lord Gabriel has kept her from actually sending anyone to the headsman, but I'd not say she would not do it," which is a clever play.
Yeah, he pretends to be the good guy while actually compelling her to be the bad guy.
Good cop, bad cop.
Totally. And he makes her look bad, and he's the reasonable voice that prevents the worst of the atrocities, and soon he becomes the person that people turn to and the power behind the throne. Yeah. Gabriel. Just a couple of bits of information about what Morghese has been doing to her people around her. Gareth Bryn did not like him, so Bryn has been retired to his estate to watch his sheep grow wool.
It's interesting that Tom knows that already.
Oh,
He's been in the city for an hour.
He knows everything. Well, he's probably been talking to Basil Gill about what's been going on.
Yeah.
We know that Lord Gabriel has made the relationship with Tarvalin worse while replacing a bunch of the guards of his choosing.
He wants to eventually go to war with Tarvalin.
Do you think so?
I think that's his goal. Well, or destroy it. But it looks like
I think he just wants to destroy the relationship between Morghese and
the tower.
Yeah. Well, at the same time, I think his current goal is to take over Caerhien, using Morghese's claim to that throne.
Which should be fairly easy.
It's totally chaotic. And we know eventually Elaine takes it over as well.
Yeah.
Using that same claim.
Next thing I have that's important to outline the plot of this chapter is Gil saying, "Here, try something different. Wait until the afternoon. The guards will be gone. That's when they switch their shifts. Then walk up and say Elaine. Make
Right.
that the first thing you say.
And Matt's like, I'm not going to wait.
Yeah. Oh, Gil also says, say the daughter's name right out, and just in case the new fellow is one of Gabriel's men, too, duck your head a little, a knuckle to your forehead, and you'll have no trouble. Burn me if I will. I pull wool and scratch gravel for nobody, not to Morghese herself. This time, I'll not go near the guards at all. They stared at him as if he were mad.
Because he wants to put that letter right in Morghese's hand. So he's like, I'm just going to skip over the
Without
guards. I'm not going to...
being polite.
I like to pull wool and scratch gravel.
Yeah.
Which is like, I guess wool being your hat. So it's like tugging on your hat or something.
Yeah.
And then scratching gravel is like kneeling. So your hand's in the dirt.
That makes sense. Scrape and bow, basically. And now that I say that out loud, I never knew what the scraping meant. Maybe, I guess, scraping the ground as you bow or grovel.
It's kind of like kissing the dirt.
Yeah. Seriously, T-Grain has a couple of votes. I mean, I can't deny it, but I just, I don't think so.
I think it changes a couple of times in the audiobooks.
There's a bit of that as well. They weren't sure either. Yeah, Christina, I always said T-Grain, but it could be T. And sometimes Jordan uses a single I as an or an E. Ravine, Sidine. How under the light, Gil said. Do you mean to enter the royal palace without passing the guards? His eye widened, as if remembering something. Light, you don't mean to...
Like remembering the story told by a red-headed farmer who stumbled over a wall and met a princess.
And then I just had a longish readout because I kind of like this scene. And that's the end of the chapter. Lad, you'd need the Dark One's own luck to escape with your life. What are you going on about now, Basil? Matt, what fool thing do you intend to try? I am lucky, Master Gil, Matt said. You just have a good meal waiting when I come back. As he stood, he picked up the dice cup and spun the dice out beside the stones board for luck. The calico cat leapt down, hissing at him with her back arched. I wanted that to be significant, but I don't think it is. The 5-spotted dice came to rest, each showing a single pip, the Dark One's eyes. That's the best toss, or the worst, Gil said. It depends on the game you're playing, lad, doesn't it? Lad? I think you mean to play a dangerous game. Why don't you take that cup out into the common room and lose a few coppers? You look to me like a fellow who might like a little gamble. I will see the letter gets to the palace safely. Colleen wants you to clean the drains, Matt told him, and turned to Tom while the innkeeper was still blinking and muttering to himself. It doesn't seem to make any odds whether I get an arrow in me trying to deliver that letter or a knife in my back waiting. It's 6 up and half a dozen down. Just you have that meal waiting, Tom. He tossed a gold mark on the table in front of Gil. Have my things put in a room, innkeeper. If it takes more coin, you will have it. Be careful of the big roll. It frightens Tom something awful. As he stalked out, he heard Gil say to Tom, I always thought that lad was a rascal. How does he come by gold? I always win. That's how, he thought grimly. I just have to win once more, and I'm done with Elaine, and that's the last of the White Tower for me. Just once more.
The only comment I had is he's weighing the odds of getting an arrow in me trying to deliver the letter or a knife in his back waiting. But delivering the letter is not going to prevent the knife in the back.
Yeah.
Because the knife in the back has nothing to do with the letter. But he's like weighing these two odds, being like, well, I might as well risk my life to deliver this thing because I'm risking my life by not delivering it.
Right.
And then I like when he makes fun of Tom. Careful the big roll. It frightens Tom something awful. Tom does not like the fireworks.
I didn't read it, but when Matt walks into the room, he's carrying the huge sling of fireworks, and he like throws it down on a table or something, and Tom like pulls his pipe away from it.
Be careful, boy. You trying to kill us all?
God damn it. This kid.
I mean, to be honest, Tom probably has the right idea.
Yeah, I wouldn't be putting any open flame near those.
I mean, especially when Matt just doesn't have the respect for them. So when he almost kills himself using them on the wall. He like blows himself over, nearly knocking him off like a 20-foot wall, which would have killed him on the way down. Because he just like lights. I'll just cut this fuse really short. You know. Meanwhile,
what's the worst that could happen?
Eludra was like, if you light one of these,
run
away. And he's like, I'll light them all together and cut the fuse really short. I'm sure that won't be any problem.
Wow. Sakan just confirmed it is indeed T-Grain. T-Grain. T-Grain? Pronounced T-Grain.
I'm still going to say T-Grain.
That just bothers me. I don't know why. Gotcha. Emphasis on the grain. T-grain. Chapter 46. A message out of the shadow. And our symbol is the lion again. Even as he returned to the inner city on foot, Matt was far from certain that what he intended would actually work. It would, if what he had been told was true. But it was the truth of that he was not sure of. He avoided the oval plaza in front of the palace, but wandered around the sides of the huge structure and its grounds, along streets that curved with the contours of the hills. The golden domes of the palace glittered, mockingly out of reach. He had made his way almost all the way around, nearly back to the plaza, when he saw it, a steep slope, thick with low flowers, rising from the street to a white wall of rough stone. Several leafy tree limbs stuck over the top of the wall, and he could see the tops of others beyond, in a garden of the royal palace. A wall made to look like a cliff, he thought, and a garden on the other side. Maybe Rand was telling the truth. A casual look both ways showed him he had the curving street to himself for the moment. He would have to hurry. The curves did not allow him to see very far. Someone could come along any moment. He scrambled up the slope on all fours, careless of how his boots ripped holes in the banks of red and white blossoms. The rough stone of the wall gave plenty of finger holds, and ridges and knobs provided toe holds, even for a man in boots.
I like how he doesn't believe that Rand actually met the daughter heir, even though he's met her himself and is carrying a message from her.
Right.
He still doubts the story that Rand told of climbing a cliff and falling into the garden and meeting the daughter heir and the queen.
Right? Like, why make that up?
Yeah. But he just never believes him from the beginning, I think, until he actually climbs the cliff himself.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, yeah, I guess it did work.
And he thinks careless of them to make it so easy, which is true. I did really like in a moment that when he finally meets Talonvor, it's like, how'd you get in here? And he was like, well, I just went over the wall. And he's like, that damn garden wall again.
I imagine no one else has ever found that vulnerability before, that Rand was probably the first one who stumbled on it because of Tavernness.
Yeah, and he tells Matt the story, so Matt remembers that there is one way into the palace.
Sure. It does make me wonder why no one took action to actually either put a guard on it or make it harder to, like, barbed wire at the top or something.
Morghese seemed amused when Rand was brought before her. He was also, sort of under Elaine's protection, which is meaningless when she's in a room with Morghese, but
sure.
Still.
You can't protect him from the source of your power.
Yeah. I do like that about Morghese's personality, where she doesn't seem very ruffled by these things, Even when she runs into Rand, she's like, clever kid.
Yeah. I like the bit of her that actually comes out here, even though she's under compulsion.
Oh, I have something to say about that.
Yeah, okay. Good. Some interesting things he found.
It's a side note, because he's like climbing up this wall, and he's like, I've done this before, and he just recalls this fun story where... And
I think Rand thought about the same trip when he was climbing, too.
Yeah.
And it also foreshadows the climbing of the stone as well.
Oh, good point. Him, Rand, and Perrin disappeared into the woods for 3 days and had a blast, and when they came back, everyone hit them.
I like that theory, CS Army, that Morghese used to sneak out of the palace that way as a kid, and that's why she wants to leave it there.
But Matt recalls
headcanon.
He brought home 3 things from the trip.
Mm-hmm.
An odd rock with the skull of a good-sized fish somehow pressed into it.
So that's just a fossil.
Yeah, and that's cool. A long white tail feather dropped by a snow eagle, which is nice.
Yeah.
And a piece of white stone, as big as his hand, that looked almost as if it had been carved into a man's ear. He thought it looked like an ear, even if Rand and Perrin did not, and Tam Althor said it might be.
I think it's a old statue of Manetheren.
Yeah. I think Robert's definitely dropping us a little crumb.
Yeah, because we've seen... Isn't there where Perrin finds something that kind of looks like the head of a statue, and they, camp beneath it? That might be in the shadow when he goes back to the Two Rivers later. Anyway, that not important. The point is that we know there's broken statues. We know there's remnants of old Manetheren in the mountains, and I'm assuming this is just one of those. Yeah,
I like to imagine that it's because Manetheren was exploded from the inside, so there are just these pieces of rubble that are at the bottom of the mountains where the capital was.
Right,
just laying there for thousands of years.
That makes a lot of sense. Or maybe another town that was overrun by Trollocs and destroyed, and they smashed the statue to pieces or something.
Yeah.
Because that whole area was supposedly covered with towns and villages.
Sure.
Satellites of Manetheren. And in Whitestone, I bet it's marble.
Yeah, I think that's what RJ's getting at when he'll say Whitestone, or he'll say like a silvery stone streaked with colors and things like that. That looks like marble to me.
Yeah, I guess when the wheel turns forever, you end up with a lot of broken statues everywhere.
Yeah, and I always come back to this, but Ingtar's dark speech about the slow decline of civilization.
Sure.
And that's like really real here, where...
Not to mention an apocalypse every 1,000 years or so that destroys all the nations.
Right. There's this rise and fall that happens consistently. Thanks a lot, Ishmael. I thought it was interesting that he sees a giant sunflower. He describes it as tall as an ogier in the garden. I walked by one the other day in someone's front lawn in Portland, and the stem of the thing was like as thick as my thigh. It was incredible.
They get big.
Yeah, like
fast.
12, 15 feet tall.
Because they're...
like a small tree, it looked like.
Yeah, but they're grass? Or like... Because they don't have... Because trees form... There's a difference between trees and plants that don't have a hard interior core.
Yeah.
And I am not a biologist, so I don't know the term for it. But
No, I know what you mean. I remember being totally blown away when I found out that palm trees and bamboo are grass.
Yep.
Palm trees. It's just a single blade of grass that's really big.
It's a genetic freak.
Yeah. So Matt's kind of sneaking through the
Yeah, he's almost
grounds
playing
here.
a game here.
He
and
is really enjoying it.
I guess if you're lucky, the guards don't look at you. You stop in just the right spot to overhear just the right conversation.
Yeah.
His luck is in full force here.
He's stalking through, and I just highlighted two more pairs of soldiers strode by along the paths, the second close enough for him to have taken 2 steps and goosed them. As they vanished among the flowers and trees, he plucked a deep red star blaze and stuck the wavy-petaled flower in his hair with a grin. This was as much fun as stealing apple cakes at Sunday, and easier. Women always kept a sharp eye on their baking. The fool soldiers never took their eyes off the flagstones.
He enjoys sneaking around and stealing stuff. Always has, always will.
Yeah. And I think he's like hiding behind a trellis that is supporting roses or something like that. He's underneath a window, and he starts overhearing this conversation.
And to set this up, this is Ravine talking to Komar about Bilal for the most part.
Yeah, and Komar, I take it as kind of like one of Ravine's like generals, for lack of a better term. It seems that it's Komar? I can't remember exactly, or something like that.
Komar, yes.
Who's
COM.
kind of a throwaway character. I think Matt kills him later, but
Yeah, Matt tracks him down in Tyr and kills him like as soon as he gets there.
it seems like this man has many men under his command, and he's taking orders right from like the king, I'm air quoting for lack of a better term, our Forsaken, and he's like one of the major
The Chosen, thank you very much.
generals.
Please use the PC term. Forsaken is a derogatory term. Chosen is what they choose to call themselves.
That is true.
No, that's actually a really cool scene where Matt takes down Komar with the dice and then flips him over a table. And Komar is like using weighted dice, and Matt's luck is so strong he like wrenches something and actually gets the weighted dice to roll him better. So like Komar's rolling like 3 6s and 2 5s, and Matt's luck forces it to be 5 6s, and Matt wins. And Komar's like, "What the hell?" and tries to stab him. It's a great scene.
I don't remember that, but that's funny. He dies in a bar fight. So I highlighted like all of this conversation, but it goes on for 2 pages here, so I probably shouldn't read all of it. We went over basically what happened, but there's some kind of interesting highlights in here. The first one I have is where Ravine is talking about Bilal, and Komar is saying like the 3 women are on their way to Tyr, and Ravine says, let them ruin his plans if they can.
And so I think that's saying the 3 girls.
Yeah, Elaine, Nynaeve, Egwene.
Yes, are on their way, and I think they have been sent by Lanfear to sort of maybe interfere. And I don't know if Ravine knows that or if he's just like, whatever, they can do what they can to mess up his plans. But we have to worry about Rand. He's the one who can destroy us all.
Yeah.
The boy is what he calls him.
And so we do get this insight that Ravine and his generals don't know where Rand is.
And they don't know really where the girls are either. They lost them when they got off the ship.
Right.
And were rescued by the Aiel.
Wild card.
I think this quote, talking about how he's been impatient since regaining his freedom, he never realized the best plans take time to mature. He wants the world in a day and Kalendor besides.
Yeah.
That's, again, talking about Bilal.
Mm-hmm.
And he may seize the girl and try and make some use of her, and that might strain my own plans. So he wants Elaine dead so that Bilal can't use her in his schemes.
Right. Better dead than a possible wrench in his plans later.
Right. Because she would also have a claim on Caerhun, and so he wants to control Morghese and have her take control of Caerhun so he controls both countries. Whereas Ravine might use Elaine to make that claim, and then perhaps again on Andor as well. If Morghese died.
Right, Elaine could be used by another chosen.
To take over both countries.
Yeah.
And take them away from Ravine.
So all Matt knows is that someone in the palace wants Elaine dead.
And he knows their voices. And he sees Komar, but he doesn't see Ravine.
Right. I'll read this little part. When he had been sneaking about, guardsmen kept popping up like mushrooms after rain. But now he walked almost the length of the garden without seeing even one. He passed several doors. It would not be so good to enter the palace without permission. The guards might do nasty things first and listen after. But he was beginning to think about going through a door when it opened, and a helmetless young officer with one golden knot on his shoulder strode out. I kind of liked that little part a good bit because Matt's passing these doors and he's like, well, maybe I should just go in. Like, I can't find anyone to let me in. So he's standing there looking at the door, and it opens.
How lucky.
Exactly what he needed.
And exactly the person he needed, because this is one of the few people who would take him seriously and not probably prevent him from getting to the Queen. If Ravine's orders to stop any word from getting to the Queen is passed among all of the other soldiers.
I would assume so, because of some things that happen in a bit.
Sure.
We know that Talon Vore hates Gabriel.
Well, he sees what's happening in the palace, and he sees the caliber of soldier that Gabriel is pulling in, and the way Morghese's behavior is changing.
Yeah. The man's hand immediately went to his sword hilt, and he had a foot of steel bared before Mac could push the letter toward him. Elaine, the daughter heir, sends this letter to her mother, Queen Morghese, Captain. He held the letter, so the lily seal was prominent. The officer's dark eyes flickered to either side, as if searching for other people, without really ever leaving Matt. How did you come into this garden? He did not draw his sword further, but he did not sheath it either. Elber is on the main gates. He's a fool, but he would never let anyone wander loose into the palace. A fat man with eyes like a rat? Matt cursed his tongue, but the officer gave a sharp nod. He almost smiled too, but it did not seem to lessen his vigilance or his suspicion. He grew angry when he learned I had come from Tarvalin, but he wouldn't even give me a chance to show the letter or mention the daughter heir's name. He said he would arrest me if I did not go, so I climbed the wall. I promised I would deliver this letter to Queen Morghese herself, you see, Captain. I promised it, and I always keep my promises. You see the seal? That bloody garden wall again, the officer muttered. It should be built 3 times so high. He eyed Matt, Guardsman Lieutenant, not Captain. I am Guardsman Lieutenant Talon Vore.
I always think of him as young Talon Vore.
Yeah.
Because that's how Morghese thinks of him. Because she's trying to separate herself from him, even though she loves him.
Oh, by calling him young?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I'd like to point out that Matt promised that he would put it in the Queen's hand himself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like he's insistent on doing that because he always keeps his promises.
He does.
And that's one of his core attributes.
He keeps his word.
He always does. If he promises something straight out, he does it.
Yeah. He's a good man, as silly as he is sometimes. Talon Vore says, "Give me the letter, and I will take it to the Queen, after I show you out. Some would not be so gentle at finding you walking about loose. I promised to put it in her hands myself," Matt said. "I did promise. To the daughter heir." Matt hardly realized Talon Vore's hand was moving, before the officer's sword was resting against his neck. "I will take you to the Queen, countryman," Talon Vore said softly, "but know that I can take your head before you blink if you so much as think of harming her."
Talon Vore is fast, because we know Matt's fast, and Talon Vore moved faster than Matt could see.
Yeah.
Like, Talon Vore, he's got some skills with the sword.
For sure. And then Matt gives this whole dissembling, lying, ridiculous story. "I'm a loyal Andorman, and a faithful subject of the Queen, the light illumine her. Why? If I had been here during the blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Oh, and
but I like how wrong he gets the, like, if I'm loyal to the queen, I'm sure I'd follow Lord Gabriel.
Yeah. He says, I'd have followed Lord Gabriel for sure. And Talonvor just looks at him and just like, he doesn't know what's going on. Or he's an idiot.
Yes.
Either one. Yeah. Take the flower out of your hair, Talonvor said as he sheathed his blade. Do you think you came here courting?
Yeah. Matt's being a little silly.
I really liked that he did that.
I do. This is just a lot. It's nice to get the sort of lighter air after like the brooding Perrin and the like
insane Rand.
Yeah, just he's going through life and enjoying himself a little bit more than anybody else.
Yeah, that's why I think of him as like almost a comic relief character sometimes.
Totally. Well, he depends on his luck, and that lets him get away with certain things. It lets him escape consequences.
Yes. He doesn't ever really have to take anything too seriously.
Right.
Talonvor leads him down halls and through more gardens, and Matt's confused about where he is by the time they actually reach where Morghese is sitting and holding court.
I like his little fancy about being made a lord.
Yeah.
As much as he complains about hating lords, and as much as he does eventually become an emperor, he still fancies it. Still has that like childhood dream of being brought before the queen and
yeah, sure,
being told accolades and rewarded. And
we all do that a little bit, I think.
I think so. But it is a bit of a childhood fantasy.
And then he sees a woman with red gold hair who sat on the raised rim of the pond, trailing her fingers in the water and staring sadly at the fish that rose to her fingertips in hopes of food. A great serpent ring encircled the third finger of her left hand. A tall, dark man stood at her shoulder, the red silk of his coat almost hidden by the gold leaves and scrolls worked on it, but it was the woman who held Matt's eye. He did not need the wreath of finely made golden roses in her hair, or the stole hanging over her dress of white slashed with red, the length of the stole embroidered with the lions of Andor, to know he was looking at Morghese. Talonvor introduces Matt. I bring a messenger who bears a letter from the Lady Elaine. Matt's awkward.
Yeah. I'd like to point out that part of the reason Morghese looks so gorgeous and young is that she's slowed.
Yeah, I think we've talked about that on the podcast before.
And I don't think she took the 3 oaths. She's not a full Aes Sedai.
No, she's not powerful enough.
So she's not bound by the 3 oaths, but she does slow a little bit from the power. So she looks like what a channeler would look like. And she's a very weak channeler, so it's probably not much of a slowing.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I'm pretty sure Morghese was raised to accepted as like a...
Definitely a courtesy.
Yeah.
She was like given the ring.
She's going to be a queen, so you can be accepted. But typically, a young woman who is as powerful as Morghese would never be raised to accepted. You have to actually be able to channel, and Morghese barely can.
Yeah, the only time we actually see her channeling is when Fail is trapped in the rubble by one of the Red Black sisters. And there's this red flag, and she like... Fail encourages her to like channel and like wave the red flag.
Yeah.
And that's like all she can do is occasionally like twitch a flag.
A little gust of wind.
Every once in a while.
You bring a letter for my scapegrace child? Her voice was cold, but with an edge that spoke of heat ready to rise. That must mean she's alive at least. Where is she? And Tarvalin, my queen, he managed to get out. At least she was when I left. Morghese waved a hand impatiently, and Talonvor rose to take the letter from Matt and hand it to her. For a moment, she frowned at the lily seal, then broke it with a sharp twist of her wrists.
It's interesting that Matt had overheard that they were headed to Tyr, but he says, "Oh, they're in Tarvalin, or at least they were when I left."
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
He knows that they've moved on.
That's all he is supposed to know.
Exactly.
In this story that he's making up.
And he's looking for an opportunity to say that he overheard someone trying to kill Elaine.
But nobody will listen to him.
Yeah, well, he's just waiting for the right moment because he doesn't realize that Ravine, the guy who ordered it, is standing right there because he didn't see him. He just heard his voice.
Yeah.
So until Ravine speaks, he doesn't realize that this dude right there.
And Morghese is clever, but I noticed that she looks at the letter and says, "She can say no more, can she?" she muttered. We shall see whether she holds to that. And so that makes me suspect that there really isn't any hidden message in the letter whatsoever. It really is what it is, face value, which is not much. She's proud that her daughter was raised to accept it so quickly,
Yeah, because we've read this letter, and there's nothing to it. It's
No.
just like, I got raised to accepted, and I'm off on another task.
And they try to question him some more, Ravine and Morghese, but Matt says he doesn't know anything else. He doesn't even really know Elaine. He makes up a fake name and tells them that he's...
Yeah, he uses Else as a cover,
Right.
which everyone's favorite nobody is Else Grinwall. And I also noticed he uses Tom's name, which I was like, that might not be the smartest name to use in front of the Queen.
Yeah.
She may associate that with another Tom that she knows.
And he says that he's from a village called Comfrey, which is north of Berlin. So effectively inside of Andor's borders, but like at the edge of it. Sure. Not the Two Rivers.
Probably a little closer than the Two Rivers, because Berlin is more... It's actually... I feel like
eastward a bit.
Yeah. The edge of where Andor goes.
Yeah.
I think if you're from Berlin, you consider yourself from Andor.
Tell me, Tom Grinwell, did my daughter look well when you saw her? Yes, my queen. She smiled and laughed and showed a saucy tongue. I mean, Morghese laughed softly at the look on his face. Do not be afraid, young man. Elaine does have a saucy tongue, far too often for her own good. I'm happy she is well. And, oh, here's what I wanted to talk about. Those blue eyes studied him deeply. A young man who has left his small village often finds it difficult to return to it. I think you will travel far before you see Comfrey again. Perhaps you will return to Tarvalin. If you do, and if you see my daughter, tell her that what is said in anger is often repented. I will not remove her from the White Tower before time. Tell her I often think of my own time there, and I miss the quiet talks with Shiriam in her study. Tell her that I said that, Tom Grinwell. And I think that is a cipher, or of some kind. She does not miss the quiet talks with Shiriam in her study. Nobody misses the talks with Shiriam in her study.
No, because those aren't quiet talks. Those are beatings.
But it's right. It's something that people who are unfamiliar with the tower and its politics and how it works wouldn't know. It sounds like a likely thing to say. I miss that kind woman.
Do you think it's a call for help?
Mm-hmm. Because if Matt does return and he sees Elaine and he says that to her, the first thing she's going to say is, well, that makes no sense.
Right.
Why is my mother sending me messages that don't mean anything or are nonsense?
So you think it's the Queen's subconscious mind trying to fight the compulsion and get a message out that she needs help?
Yeah. I think she's saying that something's wrong.
That's cool. I like that.
What does anyone want to weigh in on that? But as soon as I saw that, I was like, she's flying a flag subtly. And, you know, that's one of those things that there's no way to confirm or deny. But
And I wanted to just jump back for a second. When Matt is talking, he says, Light, will nothing put her in a good mood? He decided he was just going to have to say it out, but he wished she did not look as if she meant to cut someone's head off. My queen, by chance I overheard, and that's where he's about to say, someone threatening to kill your daughter.
yeah.
And that's the first time that Ravine speaks. He says, be silent, boy. And right then, Matt's like, oh, this is the guy that was going to kill her.
Oh, right. That didn't even hit me, but he knows the voice.
He knows the voice. But that was the first thing that Ravine had said. And it was just luck that Ravine cut him off at the perfect time to prevent him from blurting it out in front of Ravine.
Yeah.
So again, Matt got lucky there.
You know, also in this paragraph, as I was reading it, kind of confirmed my suspicion about what Morghese says. Well, a little. When he reached over Morghese's shoulder and plucked the letter out of her hand, her glare turned on him. Matt could see her temper heating. So I don't think he has, 100% control over Morghese. He has to keep pushing on her to keep her where he wants her to be.
He doesn't have her, mind warped totally.
Yeah.
He does. It's not Grendel level of compulsion. So he's still probably keeping it pretty light so people don't get suspicious.
Right.
But he's, controlling her behavior.
And then her temper flares because he snatches this letter out of her hand, and that's rude.
Mm-hmm.
But then he puts a hand on her shoulder, and she seems to calm down. And in a moment, the phrase is something like looking at him like a obedient puppy or something like that.
Yeah, and I assume that's he gives her a little dose of the compulsion right there.
Yeah. So I think Morghese is coming out, and we all know she has a very strong personality, and that those people can be harder to compel.
Absolutely.
She is also a channeler, which might help, or has the ability.
Even the light channeling, even the light connection to the one power may help her resist the compulsion.
Yeah. So that just made me think, like, maybe some part of her deep down is like, something's wrong, and I need to send a message, which is why she, told Matt to say something that can't be true. It makes me think of Firefly, when the doctor is saying, I knew something was wrong when my sister sent me letters that had a spelling error in them.
Right. No, it's just code.
Yeah.
Tom would have spotted it in a second. No, I that's my favorite explanation. I like that a lot. Because it doesn't really make sense as like a threat saying, oh, I'm still angry, I'm going to send you to Shiriam. Then she would just say, tell her she should spend some time in Shiriam's study.
Yeah. Or tell her I'll be sure she will, or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So.
And that would actually make sense.
Right. But this just doesn't make any sense. And as a coded message, that makes more sense than anything else to me.
Yeah.
Especially the way she repeats, tell her that I said that, Tom. Like, tell her I said that specifically.
Yeah. She's really driving it in. She says his name 2 or 3 times. And yeah, like I said, it's also a thing that she can say in front of Ravine.
Exactly.
And he won't know what she's talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, this is where the gold comes from. Matt says he has a bet with Ravine for Elaine's life, and it's the 10 gold pieces that he gets here.
Gabriel laughed, a deep rumble of amusement. Are you anxious, then, to milk cows, boy? Perhaps you should see something of the world before it changes. Hint drop. Perhaps you should see something of the world before I destroy it. Here, he produced a purse and tossed it. Matt felt coins through the wash leather when he caught it. If Elaine can give you a gold mark for carrying her letter, I will give you 10 for bringing it safely. See the world before you go back to your cows. Yes, my lord. Matt lifted the purse and managed a weak grin. Thank you, my lord. But then, the dark man had already waved him away and turned to Morghese with his fists on his hips. I think the time has come, Morghese, to lance that festering sore on the border of Andor. By your marriage to Tarangale de Madrid, you have a claim to the Sun Throne. The Queen's guards can make that claim as strong as any. Perhaps I can even aid them, in some small way. Hear me. Talonvor touched Matt on the arm, and they backed away, bowing. Matt did not think anyone noticed. Gabriel was still speaking, and every lord and lady seemed to hang on his words. Morghese was frowning as she listened, yet she nodded as much as any other.
She is frowning because she does not like the idea of invading Cairhien, but she's nodding because she's under compulsion to agree with him.
Yeah, and I think we see a little bit of this, or a little hint into what might be going on in her mind here later, because she's has trained Elaine to eventually ascend to the throne. So when Elaine has to go through the secession contest, or whatever, for lack of a better term, which eventually breaks out into a war, Elaine is the process. You have to be picked as the monarch before you can hold the throne. You don't take it by force. There's a whole process that you go through, and I believe that Morghese is probably, that's what's in her mind. It's like, that's not the way to do it. Like, if I wanted that throne as well, I would have to go there, and you go through the process.
I just want to read a little bit from the next chapter about the wager.
Yeah.
Hold this for me, Master Gil, Matt said, and tossed him the wash leather purse. What's this, lad? Coin? Stakes. Gabriel doesn't know it, but he and I have a wager. The cat jumped down as Matt picked up the wooden dice cup and spun out the dice onto the table. 5 sixes, and I always win. So that's that bag of gold. He turns it into his wager with Gabriel that he's going to save the girl's life.
Today was a weird day. I went to go see a good friend's thesis presentation on international politics, and God, I got there a little early, and boy, do I regret that. Some really dry presentations on a couple of different topics. Presented by like nervous college kids, so that like makes it so much less tolerable. And of course, as soon as I got in, and I like ducked in and sat right down to like stay out of the way, and I shut my phone off because I was just worried that it would make noise. And so then I didn't even have a phone to entertain me because it'll make a sound if you don't silence it when you turn it on. Shit. Trapped for 20 minutes.
That's why you bring a book with you.
And then I went out to lunch with her and a bunch of her friends, and I got an interesting lecture from a server on different types of rosé. You're
trying to work on your wine knowledge lately, aren't you?
Yeah, because I feel like I'm pretty well equipped to talk about beer. Ironically, not as well equipped as Seth, who's not a bartender. And whiskey and liquor, I kind of, your common types of liquor I know well enough that I can drink a little and talk about it for a while. But wine, there's like an entirely different language and culture around it than beer, and I really don't know anything. And there's some really interesting stuff out there. So there's a wine bar actually in the same building as my bar, which is a beer bar. And I've been stopping there every Saturday and Sunday shift because I work a day, like brunch shift on Saturday and Sunday. I stop there and drink a couple glasses of wine and make them tell me about it. They're getting used to me now. I just walk in and I'll be like, white, go. And they just pour me a bunch.
It's good. It's good that you can get that kind of knowledge.
Yeah, well, I figure if I just keep doing that, it'll stick to me eventually.
Totally. I think that's the best way to learn is by sampling and listening to somebody else talk about it.
They actually have a club that I'm considering joining. We commit to buying 3 or 6 bottles a month, and you go and do a tasting and hang out, and then you go home with your bottles.
And I mean, a wine and beer knowledge is only a small part of bartending.
Oh, yeah, sure.
A significant one, but definitely, like, most of the time, people are just going to order a beer.
Yeah, a lot of service is about bullshitting your way through and talking about things that you don't actually know what you're talking about, and other kinds of bullshitting, just talking to people.
And I guess bullshitting about alcohol is always a useful one if you're a bartender.
Right, yeah, and you get people, especially in Grain and Gristle, that come in and they're like, actually want to talk about the beer, you know?
Yeah. Well, Upright's got the beers on some good beers.
Yeah.
They do interesting things that aren't standard, so it's helpful to be able to talk about it so people have some idea of what they're getting.
Right.
If they don't necessarily understand that an 8.6 apricot saison might be a little bit different than your typical light beer.
Yes. It's crazy different. I have a go-to that's vaguely illegal. It's definitely in a gray area, but I'll pour samples for customers, and I pour myself a sample and drink it with them and talk to them about it. People love that shit, and I like it too. Yeah, just drink at the side of a table while we talk about beer.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
It's definitely a gray area. You are allowed to sample, but walking around the restaurant drinking is a little... it's only like a half an ounce of beer.
Sure. But when you do it 6-7 times in an hour, it becomes...
That is, you just had a drink, my friend.
Yes, you did. And also, I've seen the way you fill those sample glasses. That's not half an ounce.
They hold up to 4. If I'm being generous, I'll give someone 2 if they want. You can also get a flight. Then you get all 4 ounces.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?